The sirens were already blaring in my mind before I turned on the ones in my cruiser. I'd just hung up from the most terrifying call a father could ever receive. A panicked voice shouting about my daughter being attacked outside our own home. Emma, my 8-year-old blind daughter. The thought made my stomach lurch. I sped down the quiet, pristine streets of our HOA-controlled neighborhood, my tires screeching as I turned the final corner. And there it was. My worst fear in horrifying reality. Karen Morrison, the self-appointed queen of our homeowners association, wearing her usual smug expression, had Emma pinned up against our brick mailbox. Her long, perfectly manicured nails dug into my daughter's trembling shoulders like claws. Emma was sobbing, her white cane held in a desperate grip, while Buddy, her loyal golden retriever service dog, circled them frantically. Growling low, fighting the urge to intervene, I slammed the car into park and threw open the door. "Your hands off my daughter," I roared. My voice thundered across the street, shaking windows. I didn't care. Got Karen whipped around, startled, her polished smile faltering for the first time. "Well, it's about time someone showed up," she sneered. "This little brat and her mutt have been violating HOA regulations long enough." Emma's eyes turned toward me, even though they could not see me. "Daddy," she cried, voice cracked and full of panic. She staggered free from Karen and ran into my arms. "I was just getting the mail," she whispered. She grabbed me. She said, "I don't belong here." Rage surged through me. I instinctively reached for my holster before remembering I wasn't just Sheriff Michael Stevens right now. I was Emma's father. "You're assaulting a child," I said, stepping between Karen and Emma. "And not just any child. That's my daughter." Karen blinked, trying to piece things together. "The dog's aggressive. The girl's trespassing. This is common property," she snapped. "You're mistaken," I said coldly. "And you're about to learn exactly how mistaken." Just that morning, everything had been normal. Emma and I had eaten breakfast together. At the little kitchen table, sunlight spilling through the blinds as she traced her fingers across the raised dots of a new Braille book. Her excitement was infectious. "Daddy," she said, beaming, "did you know Louis Braille was only 15 when he invented this?" "No kidding," I replied, sipping coffee. "That's amazing. He was blind too, like me. But he didn't let that stop him. He wanted to help others." I smiled. That was Emma ways, seeing the best in people, always finding light where others might give in to the dark. She was born with Leber congenital amaurosis, a rare genetic condition that left her blind from birth. But you'd never know it by the way she moved through the world with curiosity, fearlessness, and a kindness that softened even the hardest of hearts. Well, almost all hearts. From the day we moved into that HOA-governed neighborhood, Karen Morrison had made her feelings clear. She showed up on our doorstep on day 2, a stack of papers clutched in one hand and judgment dripping from her voice. "This is a family-oriented community," she said, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Emma's cane and Buddy's vest. "We have high standards here." I'd nodded politely. I was trying to be a good neighbor. Emma had smiled and waved. Buddy sat obediently by her side. That was strike one. Apparently, within the first month, Karen had filed noise complaints about Emma practicing piano. Then came the anonymous note on our windshield about unleashed animals, a blatant lie, since Buddy was never off-leash. The final straw had been the letter threatening a fine over unesthetic presence of medical devices code. We knew, for Emma's white cane. She hated the sight of disability. It was inconvenient, uncomfortable, imperfect. But Emma didn't see it that way. To her, Buddy was more than a dog, he was a guardian angel wrapped in fur. He'd been trained by the top regional service animal center, a rigorous 18-month program. That cost more than most used cars. But he was worth every cent. He helped Emma navigate sidewalks, steps, crowds in our mailbox at the end of the driveway. The same mailbox Karen had just tried to use as an excuse to harm her. She said, "Buddy was bad," Emma whispered to me that morning as I held her close. She said I was bad. That I don't belong here. Those words pierced deeper than any blade. My daughter, so brave, so full of life, was now questioning her right to exist in her own neighborhood. All because one woman couldn't accept difference. No, I wouldn't allow it. You belong everywhere, Emma, I said, cupping her cheek. You're perfect exactly as you are. Karen was about to find out just how far I'd go to protect that truth. Karen's jaw tightened as I stepped forward. Placing myself squarely between her and my daughter, her eyes flicked to the badge on my belt, a detail she had clearly missed in her frenzy to assert power. The dog is out of control, she insisted, trying to regain her footing. He's been defecating on community property, and that child was trespassing on shared grounds. Buddy is a certified service animal, I said flatly, pulling my badge fully into view. And I'm Sheriff Michael Stevens. You're laying hands on a minor. My minor. For a moment, her confidence wavered. She blinked. The color began draining from her face. You're the sheriff. She STAMMERED, double quotes, yes. And you've been harassing my daughter for months. But today, Karen, today, you went too far. Her hand slipped off Emma's shoulders. She took a faltering step back, but I could see the calculations working in her eyes. She was scrambling for some angle, some way to save face. She's not supposed to be walking alone, she blurted. It's not safe. That dog is dangerous. Buddy has never been aggressive a day in his life. And Emma walks these streets every morning, safely, confidently, until now. You can't talk to me like that, she snapped. Desperate now. I'm the HOA president. And I'm the father of the child you just assaulted. Her voice grew shrill. I've been protecting this neighborhood for years. Property values are up 12% under my leadership. We have rules for a reason. Rules don't matter when you're hurting people, Karen. By now, neighbors were starting to peek out their windows. Some were filming on their phones. A few had stepped onto their lawns. Mrs. Patterson from next door appeared, hurrying over with alarm written across her wrinkled face. Emma, sweetheart, are you all right? She asked, kneeling beside my daughter. She grabbed me, Emma whispered. Said Buddy was dangerous. Said, I shouldn't be here. Mrs. Patterson's expression hardened. She stood and turned to Karen. That little girl has more courage in her pinky finger than you've shown in your entire life. Facade was crumbling. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You want to call the police, Karen? I asked, stepping forward. Go ahead, but I'll save you the trouble. I reached behind my back and pulled out my cuffs. The polished metal caught the morning sun like justice gleaming through the cracks. Karen Morrison, I said firmly. You're under arrest for assault on a minor. The shriek she let out could have shattered glass. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. You're not above the law. And starting today, you'll be reminded of that fact every single day. Karen's screams echoed down the street as I turned her around and cuffed her, hands behind her back. I'll have your badge for this, she shrieked. I know people. I am this community. But the tide had already turned, done not in her favor. Across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson stood with their teenage son. His phone pointed steadily at us, recording. Windows slid open. Front doors cracked. And slowly, one by one, our neighbors stepped out of their homes not to support Karen, but to witness what they had long hoped for. Accountability, but Mrs. Patterson placed a protective arm around Emma, who leaned into her side with Buddy pressed close to her legs. My daughter's cane, which had fallen during the scuffle, lay in the grass beside the mailbox, its white shaft, a stark symbol of innocence under siege. Janet Riley, the single mum who lived 3 houses down, marched up the sidewalk, fury in her eyes. I knew something like this was going to happen, she said. She's been bullying my kids for 2 years. Called chalk drawings on our driveway vandalism. She made me pull up my garden gnomes, added Mr. Chin from the end of the street, said they violated the visual harmony policy. More voices chimed in. She fined us over our curtains. She threatened to sue us over a basketball hoop. She told my daughter her wheelchair was an eyesore. Emma looked up, Confusion etched across her tear-streaked face. She was mean to other people too. I knelt down beside her, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. You were never the problem, baby. Karen was. Then Emma whispered something that broke my heart. She said I was broken. That kids like me should stay inside. The air went still. Gasps rippled through the gathering. Even people who hadn't spoken up before began to murmur. Whispers turned to outrage. Outrage turned to action. I want to file a complaint, Janet said, stepping forward with fire in her eyes. This ends now. Count me in, Mr. Chin added. She's ruled through fear for long enough. Behind me, Karen had finally gone quiet. For the first time, she seemed to realize the crowd wasn't with her. They never were. They were just too scared to speak, until now. I didn't mean, Karen began. But I cut her off. You meant every word, and you acted on it. You targeted a blind child, my child. You made her believe she wasn't welcome in her own neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson placed Emma's cane gently in her hand. Sweetheart, she said softly, you belong anywhere you want to be. The crowd nodded in agreement. Karen Morrison wasn't just losing her title that morning, she was losing the false authority she'd clung to like a shield. And for the first time in far too long, this neighborhood was waking up. Not to her rules, but to its own conscience. Karen sat in the back seat of my patrol car, silent for the first 2 minutes of the ride. But that silence didn't last. You know this won't stick, she hissed, as we drove past the rows of perfectly trimmed hedges and color-matched mailboxes she'd once lorded over. I'll say, I was protecting the community. That dog could have attacked anyone. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. There's no proof, she added quickly. None of this happened the way they'll say it did. There's video from 3 different doorbell cameras, I replied, eyes steady. On the road, and your voice is on every one. She swallowed hard but kept pushing. Look, Sheriff Michael, we can work this out. I know you care about property values. We all do. No one wants to live next to a liability. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Are you trying to bribe me now? She forced a laugh. Of course not. I'm just saying maybe we find a way to de-escalate. For the good of the neighborhood, the only thing getting de-escalated today is your freedom. By the time we pulled up to the station, my phone had already lit up with messages from half the department. Word had spread fast. Everyone knew Emma. Everyone knew me. And now, everyone knew Karen's name, too, for all the wrong reasons. Deputy Martinez met me at the intake desk. We've got the paperwork ready. District Attorney Williams wants this one personally. She knows. I asked. Oh, she knows, and she's furious. Martinez pulled me aside as Karen was escorted to a holding room. There's more. We executed a warrant on her residence. What we found, you're going to want to sit down. He handed me a folder. Inside were hundreds of printed pages, photos of Emma walking with Buddy, notes about our schedule, diagrams of our property, lists of minor HOA violations, all targeting us and a few other families on the street. She's been documenting you for months, Martinez said grimly. She called it a case for removal. We also found folders labeled problem families. Yours was the thickest. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This was never about the dog, I muttered. It was never about rules. No, Martinez agreed. It was about control. She wanted to drive anyone out who didn't fit her version of normal. Karen hadn't just snapped that morning. She'd been planning this for months, maybe years, but the difference. Now, she'd finally tried it on the wrong little girl, and that girl had a father who wasn't afraid to fight back. The arrest changed everything. Within days, the HOA board, once a fortress of Karen's 2 members resigned immediately, claiming they'd never supported her actions but were too intimidated to speak up. The remaining 3 voted unanimously to remove her from all roles. For the first time in years, our neighborhood breathed. Janet Riley spearheaded the formation of a new, temporary HOA committee. At the first open meeting, held in the community clubhouse, attendance tripled. People brought snacks, folding chairs, and most importantly, their voices. They didn't come to argue, they came to rebuild. The stories poured out like water breaking through a cracked dam. She'll find us for leaving our bikes outside overnight. She banned chalk drawings, swing sets, even lemonade stands. She yelled at my autistic son for humming too loudly. Each tale was another wound no one had talked about before. But in the light of Karen's downfall, the silence finally shattered, and then something beautiful happened. Mrs. Patterson nominated Emma as the honorary neighborhood ambassador. She has done more to unify and inspire this community than any adult here, she said proudly. She faced hatred and responded with courage. The crowd applauded. Emma stood shyly beside Buddy, wearing her favorite blue dress. I watched her clutch her white cane like a badge of honor, chin lifted. What does an ambassador do? She asked afterward. You help people understand each other, I told her. Just like you've already been doing, she grinned. Then I'm ready. With Emma's new title came change. Real change. Neighbors created a support network for families with special needs. A welcome committee formed to greet new residents with kindness instead of fine print. And Karen. She wasn't mentioned. Not because people had forgotten, but because they'd chosen to move forward. Emma had shown us what real leadership looked like, not through power, but through heart. She became the symbol of the neighborhood we were becoming, a place where every child belonged. The courtroom was full. Neighbors, reporters, disability rights advocates, even teachers from Emma's school. Word of what had happened spread well beyond our little HOA bubble. Now, the world was watching. Karen sat at the defendant's table, thinner than before, her expensive suit hanging awkwardly from her frame. Her usual smirk was gone, replaced by a pale, brittle stillness. Despite her lawyer's best efforts, the evidence was undeniable: videos, eyewitnesses, and damning files recovered from her home that chronicled her obsession with removing undesirables from the neighborhood. Still, she refused to plead guilty to anything more serious than misunderstood enforcement of community standards. Emma wanted to testify. You don't have to, I told her. No one expects that. I want to, she said. I want to tell the truth. For me, and for the other kids she hurt. With Buddy at her side and her white cane tapping confidently across the polished floor, Emma took the stand. She wore the same blue dress she'd worn at the neighborhood ambassador ceremony. Her hair was neatly braided, her posture straight. She looked like exactly what she was: a survivor. But also something more, a symbol of strength. District Attorney Williams guided her through gentle questions. Can you tell us what happened on the day Karen grabbed you? Emma nodded. I was getting our mail. Buddy was with me. He's always with me. She said I didn't belong there. She said I was bad. The courtroom was silent. Did you understand what she meant? I think so, Emma whispered. She didn't like that I'm blind. She thought that made me broken. A muffled sob echoed in the back of the room. And how did that make you feel? Williams asked gently. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, sad, I try really hard to be good. But she made me feel like I wasn't supposed to be alive. Even Karen's lawyer closed his eyes. But I'm not broken, Emma continued. I can do lots of things. I can read Braille. I play piano. I bake cookies with my dad. I help other kids understand blindness. Buddy helps me, but I help people too. D.A. Williams leaned forward. Emma, is there anything you want the court to know? Yes, she said softly. I think Karen was scared. Of me, of people who are different. But different isn't bad. It's just different. I hope she learns that someday. The room held its breath. Even after everything. My daughter still held out hope that the woman who tormented her might change. Within the hour, Karen accepted a plea deal for years in prison, 3 years of probation, mandatory psychiatric counseling, and a $50,000 fine to be paid to disability advocacy groups. But the real victory. Emma walked out of that courtroom taller than she'd walked in. She had faced the person who hurt her hand won. 6 months later, the neighborhood was unrecognizable in the best possible way. The new HOA board, led by Mrs. Patterson, had scrapped every rule Karen had twisted into a weapon. Instead, they introduced community events, inclusive playdates, street chalk festivals, and even neighborhood garden days where Emma helped label plants in Braille. She had become the heart of the community. No longer just the sheriff's daughter, but a mentor, a teacher, a friend. Every week, Emma hosted story time under the old oak tree near the playground. She'd read aloud from her Braille books while the other kids followed along with printed versions. Sometimes, she'd teach them how to walk with a white cane buddy, always by her side, patient and proud. And every time she finished, a line of little hands would shoot into the air. Can I learn Braille too? Can I pet Buddy now? Emma, will you come to my birthday? One afternoon, Emma turned to me and said, Daddy, I want to help more kids, like me. That's how Buddy's Brigade was born. We started small, just a few neighbors and some donations. But word spread. By the time Emma was 10, her non-profit was training service dogs and educating families all over the state about disability rights and inclusion. And then came the day she stood before the state legislature, wearing her signature blue dress and gripping her cane. She spoke into the microphone with steady grace. Every child deserves to feel safe in their own neighborhood, she said. We're not broken, we're just different. And different can be powerful. The lawmakers called it Emma's Law, built to strengthen housing protections for disabled families and fund inclusion programs in schools. Karen Morrison never returned to our county. Her real estate license was revoked. Her marriage dissolved. But every year on Emma's birthday, an anonymous donation hits Buddy's Brigade's account, exactly the amount of the fine Karen had been ordered to pay. Some people do learn to be better, even if it takes a blind child to show them how to see. That's my daughter, my hero, my teacher. The girl who turned cruelty into compassion and changed a neighborhood, a law, and maybe even a heart.